Welcome back to the Matt and Eric Talk Twins podcast. I'm here with my co-host Matt. That makes me Eric, and we are functionally 1 week away from the trade deadline and still more or less lost in the woods. So, Matt, let's get started right away. How are we feeling this week?
What a roller coaster it's been, right? So the Twins come out of the break. They lose 2 out of 3 to the Cubs. They immediately then go to Cleveland, drop the first two in really disappointing fashion. I don't know about you, Eric, but I think my hopes for this team started to dwindle fast.
I was all out on this team after the Joe Ryan start, right? I had been telling anybody who had ears how big of a game this was going to be, how big of a start this was going to be for Joe Ryan, how he was arguably pitching for his Twins career. And then he went out there and put up the worst start of his career, the worst start of probably any Twins pitcher in Twins history, and became, I believe, either the fifth.
Chris Paddock didn't make it out of the first inning against the Rockies last year coming out of the All-Star break.
Hear me out, though. Joe Ryan was either the fifth or sixth pitcher in MLB history, don't remember which, to record 6 home runs allowed in one outing. Like, that
Chris Paddock gave up like 4 extra base hits in his first 6 pitches of the game against a terrible Rockies team.
To be fair, this Guardians offense is still likely worse than whatever that Rockies team was running with.
At least Joe Ryan got through 4 innings. Chris Paddock got pulled in the first.
I feel like Joe Ryan not the first because it didn't quite fall. The wheels did not quite fall off that fast, but Joe Ryan arguably did not deserve to go 4 innings either. I think that was simply a lot more of a commentary on how horrendously taxed this bullpen is all of a sudden.
Well, I mean, it was like yeah, that's fair. They got ridden a little bit hard in the Cubs series because the pitching was terrible.
And I mean, I guess Joe Ryan also contributed to them continuing to get rode even harder throughout the Guardian series. But at least we finally got a bit of a break here with the Athletics.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that break would start sooner. So the Twins got back to Target Field. Yeah, they had salvaged the last 2 games in Cleveland. You look ahead to the schedule, you're like, we have the A's, we have the Royals, 2 teams that they should be able to beat up on. Game 1, there's a lefty. I forget what his first name is, but Lopez, little lefty from the Athletics. He throws like 88 to 90. He's an ERA in the mid-6s. A guy that the Twins really should beat up. And he shuts them down. And then the Athletics bullpen is just nails. The Twins get shut out, lose 2-0 at home against one of the worst teams in the American League. Brutal.
Even followed that up Saturday, with another, I think it was 7 innings getting shut out. I saw the Dan Hayes tweet that at one point the Twins had been held scoreless in 23 of their last 25 innings, which is really impressive when you look at the total production of that stretch and realize that the Twins still won 2 of their last 3 games in that time.
Yeah, it's the offense is going through it for sure. And then, they, as you said, won yesterday, 2-0. We're recording now on Sunday morning. We have the last of the 3 game set today. I feel like, it's kind of semantics, but I feel like it's a little bit of a win now. Coming out of that Cleveland series, kind of the thought I had was the Twins just need to win the next 3 series. If they do that, they're for sure buyers. They'll be a game above 500 going into the trade deadline. So that starts today. They have to win against the A's, then go take 2 out of 3 against the Royals at home. And then the big challenge is going to be taking 2 out of 3 from the Mariners in Seattle. I think that's what really needs to happen for the Twins to not only like hold pat or stand pat at the deadline, but also like bring in some real talent to help this roster. Because if you're below 500 or you're like not conceivably within, 2 games of a playoff spot at the deadline, it's kind of hard to say like we should bring in, rental relievers because you're just giving up future value for a guy who's only going to help you this year. And does that help really matter? And so I think if we're talking about the Twins being light buyers, they probably need to be around 500 come deadline day.
Yeah, as you mentioned, at the very least, it'll be easy enough for them to do that. Obviously, after this Royals series we have upcoming, we get the Mariners, who are pretty much in the same exact spot we are. I think they might even have an identical record. Either way, it's still a bit of an uphill battle for something that feels like it should have been so easy. I was watching the game yesterday, and they spent just pretty much the entire time talking about how bad of a spot this Twins pitching staff really is in right now. Obviously, with Mike Paredes getting the late scratch yesterday, Kendry Rojas had to come in and start the game for the Twins. And I mean, really did everything you could have asked him to, right? 4 innings, only one hit, one walk, no earned, five strikeouts. He looked phenomenal yesterday. But they're already so taxed that they made Taylor Rogers throw 2 innings yesterday, something that he hasn't done since June 3rd of this year, and something that I don't think would really be advised for a pitcher of his age at any time, at any point, at this point in his career. And they still followed that up by bringing in Tommy Nance, who was probably one of the more rested relievers. And then Andrew Morris, who I believe has now thrown 4 of the last 5 days, including at least one 2 inning day. And Andres Gomez, who is not quite as taxed, but I think is now on 2 of the last 3 days he's pitched. So once again, with Connor Prelip starting today, I expect good things to start, but we know he's not going to go particularly deep, and I just don't know what the Twins are going to do.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. This bullpen we've talked about being perilously thin, and the problem is when you only have Gomez, Morris, and Nance that you touch or you trust in leverage spots, then like if you have a bunch of close games in a row, those guys are throwing every day. You eventually have days where they're down, they need rest, they can't throw, or they pitch 3 out of 4 games, and that third game they are sore, they're tired, and they give up some runs. So I mean, I'm not saying that the Twins need to add a super high leverage guy. It'd be great add another guy with Morris in the back end that can be a real shutdown reliever. But like they need to add someone that they can trust in a tie game in the seventh inning that isn't one of those three.
I mean, that's the exact situation that we found ourselves in with Tommy Nance throwing the seventh inning yesterday. Do you really believe that Tommy Nance fits that type of role? Would you be happy if the Twins only added two more Tommy Nances?
Yeah, I mean, 2 more Tommy Nances I think is like the high end of what we can expect. Maybe I'd like to have one of those guys be a half grade better than Tommy Nance. But Tommy Nance is a real functional big league reliever, right? Like he, for his career, he's thrown 164 innings and he has a 368 FIP. The ERA lags a little bit behind, but like, I mean, a mid threes FIP. He has a 25% strikeout rate against a little bit high, a 9% walk rate. He keeps the ball on the ground, a ground ball rate above 50%. Like he's a solid setup man. Like I do not have any issues with him throwing the seventh inning most nights.
I just think it's really funny that we could now look at our bullpen. And I mean, if we're going to slot Tommy Nance in as our third highest leverage arm, which I don't think is entirely out of the question, our late inning trio is now compromised of two guys we picked up for pretty much nothing on the trade market and a rookie that we spent the entire offseason predicting as what, maybe the seventh or eighth best arm in our starting rotation. Who, again, I don't think we've quite hyped up enough the fact that Andrew Morris went from like control based, kind of soft tossing starting pitching prospect to guy who's just coming out of the pen and pumping 100 right now. Like it's been legitimately fun to watch Andrew Morris.
Yeah, I mean he's doing the Griffin Jacks thing, right? Like I think we did talk about Morris as a potential bullpen candidate, but I definitely didn't think he would add 4 or 5 miles per hour to his average velocity. Like that's been crazy. He's now a true high leverage guy. I mean, we saw it yesterday, right? Like he walks the leadoff guy, he gets a comebacker, should be a double play ball, throws it into center field. Now all of a sudden we have second and third, nobody out, and he just punches out two guys and gets a ground ball to get out of it. Like I mean, there's not a lot of guys that are able to work out of a jam like that in a close game. And, Andrew Morris does it. And he now is to the point where he has a well above average strikeout rate. He still has kept his solid command. He keeps ball on the ground. Yeah, he it was a little bit rough out of the bullpen to begin with, and he also made a couple starts for the Twins. But even still, on the season, he's thrown 50 innings, and he has a 293 FIP and a 377 xFIP. So even if he gives up some more home runs, he's still a good back end reliever. And I mean, it's hard not to like what we've seen. I think on the other side, Yendrys Gomez, while he's still getting saves, he's still been productive. He has regressed considerably since the early part of his Twins career. We talked about at the time, his first 10 innings or so, he had like a 30% strikeout rate, and he, was walking some guys, was like 8 or 9%. That's backed up a lot since then. Now he's 30 innings into his Twins tenure. He's down to a 24.4% strikeout rate. His walk rate's up to 10.5%. He's a guy that does not keep the ball on the ground much, so he's giving up a lot of fly balls, and they just haven't turned into homers yet. But assuming that some of those fly balls do turn into home runs, his xFIP is now a 4.53, and so with even league average home run luck, he's like not a guy that should be trusted in the late innings of games. It's working for now, and like maybe he can keep this up, but the underlying numbers say it's not sustainable.
At what point do you think Andrew Morris just overtakes him as the primary closer of this team? Because I mean, I understand Derek Shelton doesn't have a true closer. He pitches to the matchups rather than, just the innings. But even though Yoendrys Gomez is not the Twins' closer, he still racks up the predominant amount of our saves. Got the save yesterday, which pushed him to, I believe, 13 on the year for the Twins, which is far and away the team lead. But at what point does Shelton finally make the switch?
I mean, my answer to that is who cares, right? Like the Twins just don't have that many good relievers. The role of a closer doesn't matter that much. And like they're both throwing in late inning situations anyways. Like if you have a close game late, they're both going to pitch. The order at which they pitch doesn't really matter. And I like not having Morris locked into that closer role because he throws more frequently. You can spot him in tough matchups. We've seen Morris come in like the sixth inning before, right? Like you have runners on, it's the heart of the order. All right, Andrew Morris time. And that's kind of the fireman, high leverage role. There's a fire, go put it out role that I'd like to see teams employ their best relievers in. And so using Andrew Morris like that, I love it. It's kind of like the Guardians teams in the mid 2010s, like 2015, 2016. They had, I think his name was Cody Allen as their closer, who was very good. Like he was a legit closer, but he was clearly their second best reliever. But they had him work as the true closer to allow them to throw Andrew Miller whenever they ran into trouble, right? And so then Andrew Miller was just the weapon in the bullpen that could get you a shutout inning or two at any point during a game. And I think that that's kind of what the Twins are doing to a lesser extent. Like Morris isn't Andrew Miller, Yendrys Gomez isn't Cody Allen, but they're doing their best impersonation.
When you put it that way, it's really just unfair how long the Guardians have been running out some truly elite, at least back ends of the bullpens. I mean, obviously, we knew this is what they do, right? They had Clase for forever. Even after Clase gets popped for his gambling scandal, they still have Cade Smith in the back end who just happens to step into Clase's role and immediately resume the title of best closer in the league. I would say probably they had, like you mentioned.
Mason Miller disagrees.
Okay, that is probably the only valid argument. I honestly have not been keeping up with the Mason Miller numbers in a minute because the Padres aren't good enough for him being their closer to really matter. I know
You
he's
could also
regressed.
argue either of Louis Varland or Joan Duran over him.
I would definitely see Joan Duran in that category. I still think I want a little bit more proof of concept with Lewis Varland. I know that's going to sound
Just call him
absolutely.
Lewis. You went full government name. He gets traded, and you're like, he's not Louis anymore. Call him Lewis.
That's the Canadian in him now, but no, I know he's great. Obviously, would love to have him on the Twins still. I just need a bit more proof of concept.
Louis Varland on the year So I just had Cade Smith's numbers up, and it's pretty consistent throughout his career. He's like a mid twos ERA, FIP, xFIP, right? Like 2.6 ish. Louis Varland last year between the Twins and Toronto had a 2.97 ERA, a 3.40 or 3.14 FIP, and a 3.10 xFIP. So like, yeah, a half tier behind Cade Smith. This year, Louis Varland's thrown 52 innings. He has a 104 ERA, a 141 FIP, and a 205 xFIP. So he's clearly, a step above where Cade Smith has been every year of his career. I get that it's like, oh, well, we don't know if he's going to be able to sustain this level. But even if you split the middle between last year and this year, he's probably a little bit better or right around Cade Smith, and he's showing more upside.
I'm not going to argue that. This was mainly just a rant on how annoying the Guardians continue to be for the better part of the last decade, and I'm sure well into the future for Twins fans. Me and Matt were actually just talking about that too, because we have a dynasty baseball league that we're both still kind of involved in, and I picked up Stephen Kwan a week or two ago. And in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, like Stephen Kwan on waivers. This is great. How did this happen? And we were talking about it a bit last night. He's just not great. Like he's a Twins killer, and that immediately makes you think like, oh my God, Stephen Kwan, like this guy's going to do numbers on my team. And then you look at the actual numbers he's been doing. And granted, he had a really slow start to the year. He's gotten hot lately. But even just looking at the career numbers, it's not what you would expect for a guy who's supposed to be such a high contact, high on base type of guy. I don't know if he's ever even pushed like 285 in a batting average for his season.
Yeah, he has 2 seasons of being an above average hitter. His rookie year, he hit 298, 373, 400 for a 125 WRC plus. Then he was about league average in 2023. Then he jumped again in 2024 slash 292, 368, 425 for 131 WRC plus, and then was back to league average last year, and then is hovering around league average this year. But yeah, I mean, the Guardians, it's the most frustrating part of the Guardians, right? Like they never look good on paper, they never project all that well. And then every year they somehow win 85 games, and it seems like 20 of them come against the Twins. And it's just the most frustrating brand of baseball you can imagine. It's like this team isn't good. It's like they are running out the buck 50 hitting Bo Naylor behind the plate, and they have Petey Halpin playing center field, and they have like who is Brian Rocchio? Like that's a fake player. Like this is just some random guy.
The who is to me, dude, Petey Halpin putting up a 2 home run game on Joe Ryan to me was really what had the saxophone sounding on this twin season, because like it'd be one thing if Jose Ramirez came in and did his thing and just said, all right, Guardians are going to win this game now. Jose Ramirez wasn't even playing in that game. It was Petey Halpin's first career and second career home run off of Joe Ryan. It was, I think Brian Rocchio did have one of the home runs. Rhys Hoskins had one of the home runs, and he
Rhys
spent
Hoskins had two of the home
two of the
runs.
home runs, and he spent the majority of the rest of the series getting pinch hit for late in the game because the Guardians just don't believe in his bat to that extent. So I I'm just still a little worked up about the Joe Ryan start, and I think clearly the Twins are too, because he went from being penciled in for the start today to now being pushed back kind of indefinitely, which is a really scary thing when you're thinking that either A, the Twins are going to need Joe Ryan to try to keep this team's surge going and try to propel them up into that last playoff spot during the stretch run, or arguably even worse, that he is now hurt, is going to be out for maybe, even if he's just out for the next week and a half with a dead arm, that just kills his trade value at the deadline if it comes to that.
Yeah, I think we should talk about that so people know what we're talking about. So Joe Ryan, Derek Shelton announced yesterday, is not going to start in this A's series. He has some arm fatigue. He was originally supposed to start today on Sunday. Now they're saying he's planning to throw in the Royals series the early part of this week. He did throw a bullpen yesterday. We'll see how he feels coming out of that. I think to me, just the fact that he threw a bullpen shows that he's not seriously hurt. His velocity was normal in his last start. He just got hit hard. I think it's pretty normal, right? Like they're giving him a bit of a break. He threw in the All Star games. He didn't get the All Star break off. He's a guy that generally fades in the second half. He's coming off a really rough outing. Pushing him back a couple of days makes sense. It definitely is unfortunate timing and does make you think maybe there might be an injury. But if he goes out and pitches well against the Royals, I'm not concerned.
Yeah, I mean that's really what he has to do at this point, but have they even announced for sure that he is going to pitch in the Royal Series? As far as I've heard, this is more still a
That's what
day-to-day
Shelton said.
situation. All right, well,
Shelton said that he's going to throw in the Royals series.
as long as we do see him there, then I think we don't really need to sound the alarms. That being said, it is also just kind of that time of the year for Joe Ryan, who for his career has, I would say, some of the most pronounced first versus second half splits of any pitcher I've ever seen. And he really did himself no favors with the way he started off his second half against the Guardians. So who knows? Honestly, once we get Joe Ryan back, who we're even exactly going to be watching, but that's easily to me going to be the single most important player to watch for these next week and a half. While we do wait for Joe Ryan, we did also just receive some, I would say pretty, well, not pretty big, but definitely very positive news from Aaron Gleeman, who just tweeted out that on top of Connor Prelep being back from the injured list to make the start today, the Twins sent down Jack Anderson and that corresponding move. And they also sent Mike Paredes to the injured list, which cleared the way for the return of Cole Sands to this bullpen. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that Cole Sands solves all of our problems. He was very dicey to start the season before he went out and got hurt. But if we're talking about potential additions to this bullpen, that could be at the very least average, if not something pseudo close to high leverage. I think Cole Sands fits that bill very well. And I'm very excited to see both how the Twins deploy him coming back from the injured list and just how he performs, really.
Cole Sands, I would to set expectations. I would expect that Cole Sands will be at like the Tommy Nance level upon return, and like there's the upside that he gets back to his 2024 form, which is closer to like Andrew Morris. He could still be hurt. His velo could be down. He could struggle, right? Like before he went on the injured list, his velocity was down about 2 miles an hour from peak. His strikeout rate was pretty low. He was walking guys. Like it wasn't great. Like he was not pitching very well, frankly, to start the year. But if you go back to 2024, he had a 263 FIP and a 326 XFIP. He had a high strikeout rate. He didn't walk anyone. He was a very good reliever, right? Last year, it backed up on him a little bit, 4.5 ERA. The underlying numbers still solid. He wasn't striking as many guys out, but still, 358 FIP, a 405 XFIP. That's Tommy Nance territory. I think probably we can expect him to be closer to Tommy Nance, but like if everything clicks, he gets back to where he was in 2024. He's now suddenly another high leverage arm. I just wouldn't count on that happening.
Yeah, I think the big thing is we just need him to be at least back to a 2025 level. It was only 11 innings to start the season, but it was another kind of big leap in regression for Sands at the start of the year. He was walking more guys, giving up more hits, striking out less guys, and this obviously all led up to him giving up a lot more runs and just not generally being able to pitch as effectively, getting pulled without even finishing a full inning more often than you would like to see. So it'll be big. It'll be, I wouldn't necessarily say that he is going to be the most important, addition to this team the Twins make in the next week. I sure hope he's not, but he has at least the potential to be that type of addition to this team.
Yeah, I think it says something about the Twins that we're two players into this discussion, and Eric has talked about both of them being some of the most important guys to watch over the next week and a half. Everyone's important. This week and a half is just very important, and how the Twins play is going to matter a lot.
Yeah, they haven't totally played themselves out of being buyers at the deadline, and I don't think they've played poorly enough where we're guaranteed to see Ryan Jeffers and Joe Ryan get traded. But they certainly have not given themselves any more runway to walk. I mean, we came out of the break saying, hey, you don't even need to be great against the Cubs and the Guardians. Like, if you could go Dutch over the entire series, then you just got to beat up on the Athletic and Royals. But then that's what they did. They went 3-4 in total against the Guardians and the Cubs, and now they need to beat up on the Athletics and the Royals because they have no other choice now. They are truly in a corner.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's quite desperation time, but like you do have to be realistic about this team. They're 2 games under 500. There's only what 8 games, 7 games, 7 games to play until the deadline. Like really, they need to go 5-2 or at the very least 4-3 to make me think, the Twins are going to buy. I mean, we can even talk about it, but there's also a chance that the Twins are around that mark and decide to buy and sell. Maybe they fall a little bit short. They decide to just sell at the deadline. Like, there's a lot of avenues open to them. I do think this is going to end up being a real seller's market just because of how many teams are in the hunt. And, for a Twins team that we didn't expect to be very good this year, has a lot of young talent knocking on the doorstep to, make this roster, make an impact on this team in the short and long term. I don't think it's the end of the world if they end up selling, right? Like you trade Trevor Larnach, you can probably get something of value for him, immediately replace him in left field with either Alan Roden playing more regularly or calling up a guy like Walker Jenkins. You also have Josh Bell that you could trade. You wouldn't really get much of anything for Josh Bell, but you free up some DH at bats for the aforementioned Jenkins. Maybe you get Buck off of his feet, have him DH a little bit, call up Hendry Mendez to DH. There's options. We've talked at length about all the different options behind Ryan Jeffers. He's clearly not part of the Twins' future plans, and there's a ton of teams looking for catchers. You could probably get something significant for him. Bailey Ober probably wouldn't have too much of a trade market, but you can get something minimal for him for a team that needs a fifth starter. And the Twins, honestly, are probably going to non tender him in the offseason, anyways. Joe Ryan, obviously, is the big piece here. You could get an absolute haul for him. Whether or not they do, that's going to be for me, right? Like, even if the Twins sell some pieces, even if they trade Trevor Larnach, okay, well, we're going to replace him with Erod and Jenkins. Oh, they trade Jeffers. Well, our second and third catchers are probably the best second and third catchers in the league. Like, they can still stay afloat without Jeffers, right? Like, there's avenues to sell without giving up on this season. If they trade Joe Ryan, they are giving up on this season. And I think that's the big one to watch, right? Like if Ryan gets shipped out 24 hours before the deadline, it's wraps and they're playing for 2027.
I need to step in first and foremost and say we said what about Bailey Ober for two reasons, right? One, I don't think that he has really any trade value on the market. Let's be real, he's not changing any team's fortunes this year. Even if he gets traded to a contender that just needs a fifth starter, he's probably getting left off of the postseason roster. And on the flip
Right.
side, the Twins they cannot afford to lose Bailey Ober. They already cannot scrape together a five-man starting rotation from week to week. We've had
Yeah, but I'm saying this is a situation where they're just selling, right? Like they don't care about 2026. They
no,
can start Mike Paredes if they're trading Bailey Ober,
I mean,
right?
I
Like
get that, but
who
at some point,
cares?
you're putting the entire team in jeopardy. They could start Mike Paredes in place of Bailey Ober, but now you're asking both Mike Paredes and Kendry Rojas to fill every fifth day starter spots, and they're not going to be out there throwing 5-6 innings. You're pretty much resigning yourself to having two bullpen games every fifth turn. And I just don't think that this team is built to throw that type of innings out of the bullpen, even if they're incredibly bad, terrible, no good innings. Like at that point, we are legitimately about to try and coax Simeon Woods Richardson back from the Blue Jays just to sit here and eat innings.
Yeah, but also like they do have arms, right? at the point where you no longer care about the results, everyone has enough arms to throw a million innings a day. Like, you can throw whoever out there. Like, we just saw the Oakland A's sign an ancient Dallas Keuchel to a minor league deal because the A's are probably going to need him to like just eat innings down the stretch. They don't care if he's good or not. He's an old guy. They can throw him 5 innings and it's probably going to be mediocre, but who cares, right? Like, the Twins could bring back Erasmo Ramirez and what was that one
Show
guy?
me Thomas Hatch.
Yeah, Thomas Hatch. Like, you could just bring in random dudes that'll eat 4 or 5 innings, and it's probably going to be ugly, but who cares, right? So, like, yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, if you trade Bailey Ober, the return's going to be minimal, and like, it really is punting on the season. But also, who cares about this season? At the point where you're trading Joe Ryan, you're trading Ryan Jeffers, you're trading Trevor Larnach, you're not planning to be good this year. Get something for Ober. You're going to get nothing when you non-tender him in the offseason.
Yeah, I guess my argument really just revolves around the idea that I think Bailey Ober is worth truly nothing. I mean, we got what cash for Simeon Woods Richardson. I think that's legitimately the best we could do for Bailey Ober too.
I disagree because Simeon Woods Richardson this season had a 7.74 ERA, including a 6.17 FIP and a 6.06 xFIP, with only an 11% strikeout rate to a matching 11% walk rate. Horrendous.
But he is generally young enough and had the production in every year leading up to this season where you could see a team looking at him and thinking, hey, let's see if we can't make one or two adjustments under the hood and get him back to a low to mid 4 ERAs type of guy. But at that point would have still had what 3 years ish, 2 years of control left to be your kind of just solid everyday back of the rotation starter. Like there's value to that, and I get that's also what Bailey Ober would be. I just feel like Sim had at least something akin to upside that would have allowed a team to take a shot on him. And I think that Bailey Ober has the same upside that Sim had even when we traded him earlier this year.
I mean, I disagree with that just because Ober has been, and it's been a while, right? But he has been a middle of the rotation guy in the past. He also has a much longer track record than Sim. Like, he's been productive for a longer stretch. And he also, I think another thing that we're discounting here, right, is that Sim wasn't pitching well at the time that the Twins DFA'd him. They were only able to trade him for cash, and it was also very early season, right? Like, nobody's really buying, and also Sim's not going to help you right now. The difference is Bailey Ober is at least showing he's a competent fifth starter. That might not return a lot. It's not a guy that you're starting in the playoffs. But we see guys like Michael Lorenzen or man, Eric Lauer can do this. Like, we see guys that are competent fifth starters that end up getting traded at the deadline because you're going to stabilize every fifth game. You're no longer running out there random rookies who are going to get shelled, and then maybe they can be a swingman out of the bullpen in the playoffs. That's what I see Bailey Ober doing here. It's not exciting. It won't be a large return, but they'll get something of value for him. It might be like a 40 grade prospect, but like that's something, that's some value. And Bailey Ober is going to get non-tendered this offseason. So like might as well get something for him.
Yeah, I guess this should be the time where I remind myself that we somehow traded Chris Paddock for value last season. And I think really if we
Not
can
only
do
did
that,
they get a 40 grade prospect for Chris Paddock, they also got the Tigers to eat Paddock's entire contract and what remained on Randy Dobnak's contract. Like, the Tigers ate like $4.5 million and gave us a promising like A-ball catcher.
you say eat as if Randy Dobnak hasn't been a like questionably great pitcher this season.
Well, his contract expired. He spent all of last year in Toledo. So like, I don't know. I don't think that they traded for Dobnak with the idea that they needed to bolster their AAA rotation.
No, it absolutely was a salary eating measure. I just really needed some way to mention to the fans that Randy Dobnak is still kicking and actually doing it kind of well this year.
Yeah. I mean, this is all to say that like the next week is really going to determine what the Twins do here, right? Like they could hard sell, and it's Ryan, it's Larnick, it's Jeffers, it's Bell, it's Ober, like everyone with value out the door. Play the young guys, right? They also could kind of go the other way. You know, maybe they play well. They want to bring in a couple of veteran guys in the bullpen. Maybe they add a fifth starter. Maybe they're the ones that go trade for a Bailey Ober type to be kind of that fill in fifth starter, right? They also could kind of do some other things, right? They could buy and sell. They could trade major leaguer for major leaguer. That's hard to execute, but I think something the Twins would be open to. And then the path that I think would be really fun, and it'll be interesting to see if the Twins choose this path and if they actually want to be aggressive. But I would love for the Twins to trade some of their lower minors guys, trade some of their further away prospects, and go after some controllable major league talent. Because right now, you look at this team and you say, we kind of have our young guys that are performing. We have a lot of AAA guys that are close to the big leagues that we think are going to be impact talent soon. But a lot of our like veteran players that we know are good are also about to be leaving. And so I would like to, while those guys are still here, bolster this roster with one more mid rotation starter, right? Bring in another solid guy that not only is going to be here this year, but can be here for a couple years after. That can be the third starter, can be the number two starter, and can pitch playoff innings. I think that goes a long way for this team. And just think about like if the Twins decide not to trade Joe Ryan this year, and they get Pablo Lopez back next year, right? They could go into next season with a top three in the rotation of Pablo, Joe Ryan, and Taj Bradley. That's an excellent top three. Behind that, you have Mick Abel, you have Connor Prelip, you have Festa if he's healthy, you have Zebby Matthews if you want, you have Kendry Rojas if you still think he's a starter. Like you can go into next year with a really promising rotation where it looks bad right now, and adding Pablo back is a big part of that. Now imagine if you go trade for a controllable mid rotation starter like Reed Detmers. Not only does that help you this year, it gives you a big three if you make a playoff run, but also going into next year, if you're telling me that you could have Pablo, Ryan, Taj, Detmers, and then your choice of a plethora of intriguing arms for the fifth starter spot, and the rest of them or a couple of the other guys get moved to the bullpen, now I'm excited about this pitching staff.
I've got one name specifically in mind that I'm going to bounce off you here, and I think you'll understand why. I've been seeing a lot of hype around the idea of Ryan Weathers being one of those major league ready talents that the Yankees could probably be fine giving up this season. And obviously, the fit is there if the Twins are going to do kind of that major league for major league swap. I think Ryan Jeffers is a no brainer to the Yankees. They would be over the moon. And if we just saw Curtis Mead get traded for Connolly early, I think the Twins can really shoot the stars for Ryan Jeffers.
Yeah, I mean the thing is that Curtis Mead has 3 more years of control. He's only 26. Jeffers is already 30. He has 2 months of control. So it's a little bit different of a situation. But if the Twins could trade Jeffers for a controllable starter, I'd be all over it. Whether that's Ryan Weathers or shooting a little bit higher like Will Warren, or the Red Sox have a bunch of guys that they could shoot for. If we're talking about relievers, the Rays have a bunch of guys that they could trade for. There's a lot of options, and we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I don't mind that at all. I'd like to aim a little bit higher. Ryan Weathers is probably more of a fourth starter. He has some kind of ugly career numbers that look better over the last couple of seasons, but he's still probably not a guy that you're super stoked about pitching in the playoffs. And he does have injury concerns, but I mean, he's a starter with a couple more years of control that you'd get for a rental. If that's available, I would have no issue with it.
I also think if you're the Twins, you got to look at him, and he's only 26. His arm does not come with a lot of mileage on it. I mean, he's only made 75 career starts. He's thrown under 400 innings still. So this is a guy that I think you feel good about getting relatively young and kind of still early into his career. I'm not saying that he's got some late, like ace level jump in him, but I think if you're the Twins, who historically have done a pretty good job at developing pitching, you look at a guy like Ryan Weathers and you still have to believe that if he's a good like fourth starter right now, you can continue to make some tweaks, make some changes, push him up to where he really is a solid, at least playoff starter. If not elite, a guy that you're not giving up by throwing out on the mound.
Eric, why has he only thrown 400 big league innings?
Some would be a little bit concerned about the injury history that is attached to Ryan Weathers, but I think it's similar to the way that Matt always likes to say that pitching prospects don't exist because until they're in the major leagues and healthy, they're just kind of an unknown quantity. While guys with injury histories certainly raise red flags, I think pitchers are just inherently a walking injury risk, and I am not as risk averse to pitchers as I am hitters when it comes to injury.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line is, I don't even think that the Yankees would give up Ryan Weathers for Jeffers. Like, I would love a Ryan for Ryan swap because I think that Weathers is a lot more valuable player. But like, I think it's probably unlikely the Twins can really get a controllable starting pitcher for Jeffers. And if the Twins were going to trade a prospect package for a guy, I would probably want that to be a little bit higher level of a pitcher than, Ryan Weathers. I maintain that I would love for the Twins to go after Reed Detmers. Really, all of the guys that I would love for the Twins to go after are Angels, right? Like Detmers is a stud. Jose Soriano has taken a step forward this year. He's controllable for a few more years. The guy that I would love, and it's really outlandish, and I don't think he gets moved, and I definitely don't think the Twins win a bidding war for him. But like, how good would Zach Neto look in this lineup? A righty bat who can thump, he can get on base, he has power, he can steal bases, he plays a decent shortstop. Like a good hitting right-handed shortstop is exactly what the Twins need right now. You could say, well, they have Kalen Culpepper knocking on the door. He can just be Zach Neto. And yes, that's ideally what you're hoping for. But you could also just make a trade and get the fully formed, productive Zach Neto. They won't do it. They shouldn't do it. It would be really cool if they did.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say that if you want a righty with a bit of thump, a bit of speed, and certainly a bit of defense at shortstop, Kalen Culpepper just got activated. I mean, I don't get me wrong. I do like Zach Neto. I like him a lot. I think he's probably a top 7, 8-ish shortstop in the game. I just don't think it makes sense for the Twins to be that level of buyer at the trade deadline, right? Like I mean, if we're talking trading with the Angels, we already have to put a bunch of qualifiers and precautions on that because it's the Angels. By every mean, for the past like 8 years, they should have been sellers at every trade deadline, and they've somehow talked themselves into being buyers more often than not. So it's not really that you're worried about the players you're getting. It's just, can we really believe that this is the year that the Angels are going to sell all of these pieces? And even if it is, I just don't think that the Twins need to be taking that big of a swing on a guy who is going to be expensive very quickly and controllable for not that much longer when we have
Uh,
bigger needs that could be plugged by, I wouldn't say more promising guys on that roster, but guys who certainly fit our roster better.
okay, so to push back on that, Neto is like the upside case for Culpepper, right? Like you're hoping Culpepper turns into Neto. Neto also is controllable not only for the rest of this year, but 3 additional seasons afterwards. So he is under long term control. The Twins would have him through the 2029 season. So, like, he's around for a while. I agree that, like, it's a buyer's move and it's a big swing and it would take a lot of prospect capital. But this is, think of it not so much as the Twins are trading away the future for a guy that'll help them now. It's that they're trading away some pieces in their future for a piece that'll help them now and in the future. Like they're trading away some uncertainty, some upside in the future. Like if all 3 of the prospects they deal for him hit, they will produce more value than Neto. but they're trading away that uncertain value for here's a guy that's going to help us now and will help us in the future. Like that's kind of the way I see it. And like I agree, it probably doesn't make sense if you're trading a big package for a controllable player to help now and in the future. It should probably be a mid rotation starter, sure, but like Neto would be a huge upgrade to this team, and he is a guy that fits them in the long term as well. He's only 25, and he has 3.5 years of control. Like that's the kind of guy you go after when you're trying to turn the corner as a franchise. And the Angels probably are more willing to trade him just because they have a new GM in charge. You have John Mozeliak taking over for Perry Maniason. Maniason, I think, realized that a lot of his job security came in that he was willing to try to win. And now the Angels have fired him. I think it points to them going in a different direction. Whether or not they give Mozeliak, full reign to trade away from this roster as the interim GM, who knows? But like, I think he probably wants to, and the Angels are probably more motivated than ever to do that.
I have two more rebuttals to that. For one, I think that it's very fair to question how much of the Angels' decisions to stand pat and often buy and try to win over the entire Perry Maniason tenure was really much more about the way Art Moreno wanted his team to be ran and what he was directing from the real top. He's pretty well known, I would say, as one of the more hands on owners in the league. I do think it's a little bit of a tough sell to believe that after, years upon years of not letting this team budge an inch in terms of competitiveness, that he would hand over the keys to a complete teardown to a interim GM. That being said, I also think we're just underrating the price tag that Zach Neto would come with. As you mentioned, it would be an incredible bidding war if he got put on the market. I think for the same reasons you laid out, that he's a great pickup for the Twins, you could really argue that all 29 teams would immediately be calling on Zach Neto because, yeah, how often do you get a four-war player with 3 more years of control at one of the hardest positions to fill in baseball up on the trade market?
Yeah, I mean, he would be really expensive, and it would. I mean, the price tag's going to start with a couple of top 100 prospects, right? Like, I don't think you're trading away, Walker Jenkins in any situation. I don't think the Twins would be willing to trade. Well, they can't even trade Von Lackey right now. Like, the very top of their farm system would be off limits. But like, we're talking about this, maybe being Culpepper and Riley Quick, or Emmanuel Rodriguez and Merrick Houston, right? Like
I
it
don't
would
think the
take.
Angels even pick up the phone for those offers. We saw the number 3 prospect in the game, Leo DeVries, get traded straight up for Mason Miller last year. And I think that Zach Neto holds more trade value than Mason Miller.
Yeah, agreed. But also AJ Preller just bungled that trade to an extent that everyone in baseball thought it was an overpay immediately.
Oh, I
Like
don't
that's a
disagree.
one-off deal.
But if the number 3 overall prospect in baseball was an overpay for Mason Miller, I think that's where the Angels start in their asking price for Zach Neto. I don't disagree that
That's
Walker
that's that's
Jenkins
just
is untouchable, but I think the Angels don't do deal without him.
okay. Well, that's just going to be a non-starter, right? And also, you can't point to an outlier and be like, "Yeah, I know this is an outlier, but that's where it's going to be." Like that's what the price is. It's like, okay, one GM made a massive mistake and traded away a very very top prospect. Like Leo DeVries is the highest rated prospect to ever be traded before his debut, right? Like that is an insane thing to trade, an insane player to trade, especially for a reliever. Like that made no sense at the time. It still makes no sense. You can't reasonably go into a negotiation and be like, this guy absolutely effed up everything over here and made a horrendous trade that everyone knew in the moment. You got to do the same with us because every reasonable GM in baseball will look at that and go, yeah, I'm good. I, why would I do that?
I'm not saying that that's the standard going forward now, but I'm saying that if we can definitely agree that Zach Neto has more value than Mason Miller, then I think that a top 10 to 15 prospect is what it's going to take to pry him away from the Angels.
Sure. And if that's the price, then the Twins can say no. But I'm just saying that like kicking the tires and being willing to trade some guys that are a little bit further down the road for a guy who can help now and in the future is good business for them, right?
Absolutely. I would not disagree with that. And you hope that Jeremy Zoll, who spent a few years learning underneath Derek Falvey, would be similar in his approach to pretty much any sort of acquisition period, because I think that's what Derek Falvey was probably the best at, and what we appreciated him for the most while he was in Minnesota was that the Twins did seem to pop up on conversations on pretty much any semi-attainable player that was ever on the market, be it free agency or trade. I mean, there was whispers about Framber Valdez and Freddie Peralta to the Twins this offseason. They've been active largely in picking up pieces at what, like the 22 and 23 trade deadlines, I think. And while they, not haven't really been buying as of late, I think the fact that Derek Falvey was always in on these types of conversations bodes well for the way that Jeremy Zoll would continue to run this organization.
Yeah, and I mean, it's all speculation, and by the time we release a podcast next week, we'll just know what the answer is. And so, I mean, who's to say? But I just want to throw it out there that, like, Neto would be interesting. The Twins have a ton of prospect capital. Like, they have a top 5 farm system in the league. And if they get to a point where they look competitive this year, they want to buy, and they want to buy not only for this season, but in the future, Neto's a guy that fits the team really well. I'll also say, and this applies to Soriano, Neto, and Detmers, the Angels have been reported to be prioritizing young catching in returns for these guys. Again, the Twins aren't going to trade Von Lackey, but like you look at the rest of their farm system, maybe they turn around Eduardo Tait. He's a guy who's 19. He's in high A. He's a ways away. He's not going to help the team anytime in the immediate future. And now he's uncertain to stick at catcher. And the Twins also have a better catching prospect. Maybe they're willing to trade Tait. Maybe that's a guy that the Angels would love. And that could be one of the main pieces in a deal, right? That's something I think the Twins should explore.
If you want to talk about a trade or potential trades that I think the Twins should explore, I don't necessarily know how available these guys are going to be because they are even younger and more in control than these Angels guys. But this Reds team is sitting absolutely dead in the water. I don't think that Hunter Green would be on the market, but maybe a guy like Andrew Abbott, already 27. I don't know how much control he has left, but it can't be more than 2, 3 years, I'd imagine. I think at the very least, Andrew Abbott would be a fun return. I think if you want to talk about Hunter Green, he's a guy you could maybe blow away the Reds for an offer for. But to me, I think this is where I would be circling the wagons.
Yeah. Also, my brother in law, massive Reds fan, he gets pissed whenever I bring up the Reds trading any of their pitching. But yeah, I mean, he would be furious at a Hunter Green trade. I agree, though. I mean, it makes sense for a Reds team that A, isn't doing anything now, has clear holes in the major league roster, and also has a bad farm system, and we know they're not going to spend. Probably should cash in on Hunter Green sooner rather than later and get a franchise altering haul. If that does happen, I think that the Twins probably won't be the team to walk away with Hunter Green. But like you said, I would love like a Nick Lodolo deal. Like that would be great. Andrew Abbott's okay, but I don't trust the underlying numbers for him.
I mean, even if we're shooting a little lower brow, I think a guy we're really familiar with, who I just found out surprisingly has 3 seasons of 3 or more WAR in his last 4. Brady Singer's got to be like pretty cheap to acquire, and I think he's kind of your ideal mold of like a current back of the rotation guy who's going to sit there and eat an every fifth day start and be very respectable about it, and still has a little bit of upside left to him.
Yeah, I mean, agreed. Like, I think that would be a fine pickup. You probably could get away with trading a 35, maybe 40 grade prospect for him and just paying his salary the rest of the season. Like, that would be fine. I mean, also this Reds team, like I wrote about on an article on Twins Daily, but Caleb Ferguson is one of my favorite options for the Twins to go after in the bullpen. He's another guy that you could loop into a trade here. He's definitely going to get dealt before the deadline. Yeah, I mean, Pierce Johnson, another guy that's interesting. His strikeout rate's way down though, so maybe the Twins are not as intrigued there. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, that's definitely another team to keep an eye on. Also, if the Twins wanted to add a bat, Eugenio Suarez will probably get dealt. Nate Lau will get dealt. Either of those would be cool.
Would be really funny if the Twins went out there and traded for Gino Suarez after we spent most of the offseason just absolutely howling and pounding the table about how if the Twins were at all serious about contending that they could drop another 20 million to bring this up to a somewhat more respectable 120 million dollar payroll and go get Gino Suarez. And I mean, I think anything and everything we said back then still rings true right now.
Yeah, except Eugenio Suarez has put up an 84 WRC plus and negative .6 WAR this season. Like he has not hit at all. 36% K rate. The power's down. I mean, he looks pretty cooked right now. Like if the Twins were to trade for him, the Reds would probably have to eat some money to trade him.
Is he on a 1-year deal?
He sure is.
That's crazy. I don't know. He's certainly not high in demand right now. He feels very much like a Josh Bell type to me, where it's like no matter what type of season he's been having, there's probably always going to be some team out there willing to take a flyer on a guy who historically A is a big second half player and B is just a masher in general. I mean, not saying that you expect Gino Suarez to change your team's entire fortunes in one season. Clearly Seattle did last year, and it almost got them over the hump. But at the very
Yeah.
least, it would be a fun ad to see.
Okay, but counterpoint, Gino was bad after the Mariners traded for him. Like he had like a W or a sorry, he had like a 90 WRC plus down the stretch. His strikeout rate was way up. His walk rate was down. He wasn't hitting for power. It's like he had a big first half with the Diamondbacks. It convinced the Mariners to give up a pretty solid return to get him. And then he was bad down the stretch. He's been bad in the first half this year. We're now up to like a full season sample of him being a pretty poor hitter. And he's 34. Like the wheels might have just fallen off and he might not ever recover. And so what I'm saying is like, I agree with you. There's probably a team that's willing to bet that Gino's going to get hot. If he does, he's a masher that can play in the middle of an order of a playoff team. There's probably not going to be a huge demand because he is expensive. It is a 1-year deal and he's been bad for a full calendar year. And so I think it's a decent spot for if the Twins don't want to give up future value, they do want to add a guy that they think could have some upside, can play third, he can play first, he can DH, and also like he can be an impact, but he's not going to cost anything for a prospect's perspective. They can just bump up the payroll, absorb his contract, and get, potential difference maker for free. Downside, where do you play him? You have Brooks at third. You have Lewis and Bell at first. You have whoever is left of Lewis and Bell DHing, plus a bunch of the outfielders you want to get time. Not a lot of places to play Eugenio Suarez if they traded for him.
I was just about to say the same thing. He really doesn't fit this roster now, and I think in any world where you're, maybe trading away Josh Bell or Trevor Larnach to get more at bats freed up for other guys on the team, you really don't want to immediately replace all those at bats with Gino Suarez, because at that point, why did you not just keep Josh Bell?
Yeah, agreed. A guy that could be a decent role player for the Twins, is under control for a couple years, is a former Twin, does hit lefties well, which is what the Twins need. Spencer Steer, he probably won't be super expensive to trade for. He is just a role player. But overall, like a league average bat that can play kind of wherever. Play the outfield, he can play corner infield, he can moonlight at second base. He hits lefties well. He could be a potential like medium term short side platoon guy in the outfield for all those left-handed hitting outfielders we like to talk about. I think he could be an interesting low wattage pickup. I would like, long term. I know Austin Martin has been decent this season, but like I would trust a guy like Spencer Steer as the short side platoon bat in the outfield over, Austin Martin or Kyler Fedko or even like Gabby Gonzalez. Give me Steer instead. He's shown he can do it.
The guy I think I would really love to have back from the Tyler Molly trade right now, though, has got to be Christian Encarnacion Strand, who I also, not paying a lot of attention, did not realize is an Oriole now. Not really sure what deal would have sent him there, but
He got DFA'd and like just outrighted off the roster. Like
hell yeah.
he was a waiver claim or like a minor trade.
You know, now that I'm looking a little bit closer at his stats on the year, I'm realizing he's done all this over 6 games. So, yeah, maybe I'll just stick with Spencer Steer there.
Yeah, I mean he has a 30% strikeout rate. Well, on the season, almost a 31% strikeout rate in AAA, and hasn't hit it all in his big league career.
Not saying that I enjoyed the Tyler Molly trade at all from a twin standpoint, but to me, those are always my favorite archetype of trade deadline deals when two teams come together to make a trade that makes a lot of sense and then it just does not work out for either team. It's kind of like, well, we tried and we both failed pretty miserably, but at least nobody really has to feel bad about it then.
Yeah, it was just a bad deal all around. Also, the Brewers just DFA'd Lance McCullers, and so it looks like they ate that $2.5 million to just pick up that controllable lefty that wasn't particularly good. So that's interesting. I mean, it looks like for as much as we talked about, oh, the Brewers see something, the Brewers pitching lab is gonna make Lance McCullers bounce back. It really was never about Lance McCullers all along. But he's a guy that I wouldn't mind seeing, the Twins trot out in the bullpen and see what he could do.
Yeah, he was doing that a lot for the some of those Astros playoff teams, and I think that's the big thing too when you're looking at pickups at this time of year is even if a guy's not necessarily going to be elite, to have such a strong, stable veteran presence with so much of a track record of being successful and being a part of teams that have played in big games and big series. I think that's also an indescribable, almost incalculable value, especially to a Twins team that is still predominantly young and figuring it out.
Yeah, I mean the Twins team does have a lot of experience though. Like they have young players, but they also have Buxton who spent 10 years in the league. They have Taylor Rogers who spent 10 years in the league. They have Josh Bell who spent 10 years in the league. They have Victor Caratini who's approaching, I think like 8 or 9 years in the league. I think Cody Clemens, even though he only has like 2.5, 3 years of service time, he's been around. His dad was a big leaguer, of course. So like he's a young veteran. I don't know. They have some guys.
Yeah, it really is kind of funny. I was also thinking about that the other day when Josh Bell hit his 10 years of service time because, like, that's a really big deal for a good reason. A 10-year career is really, really hard to achieve in the MLB no matter who you are. And so I do think it's kind of funny that the Twins are stocked pretty much entirely of either young guys still on their rookie contracts or veterans hitting or pushing that 10-year threshold. Is really kind of an all or nothing thing with them here.
Okay, they do have guys in between though, right? Like most of their starting rotation is in that in between. Like Bailey Ober is he's about to be at 5 years of service time. Joe Ryan, same thing, approaching 5 years. Pablo Lopez is at like 7 or 8 years of service time. Like they do have a wide assortment of veterans.
Maybe a little bit, but like even Bailey Ober and Joe Ryan are both only hitting 30. Like they're certainly veterans, but they're not your like 10-year-old wily grizzled vet. We've seen everything type of veterans. Like they're
Yeah,
guys
yeah, but
who came
that's
up, spent their entire career with one team, and I mean,
yeah, but like that's what you're gonna have. That's why it like I don't know what you're getting at here because they have the old guys like they have Rogers and Bell and Caratini and Buxton, and then they have like the middle class of guys who are like approaching free agency, and they have young guys. Like what are they missing in that hierarchy?
I just sometimes kind of struggle to remember that both Bailey Ober and Joe Ryan are already 30 years old and have been
Yeah,
around for 5 and 6 years, respectively.
yeah, they debuted late too. Like they're older guys. Um, Yeah, also like I have the Fangraphs player search up and it's always disappointing when I look over to like the minor league side, right? Cuz they have like the major leaguers on the left minor leaguers on the right, and they have birthdays listed for the guys who haven't debuted yet. And every one of their top 10 prospects, like most searched prospects from this week, every one of them is at least a year younger than me.
It's a really tough realization to hit. I think that's the biggest thing about being a sports fan that catches up to you is you spend your entire life up to this point talking about these guys as young guys, as kids, as guys with, their whole career ahead of them. And then you hit 24. I mean, in my case, I'm 24, and it's like the the young guys, like, where do they go? Why isn't this 24-year-old considered a young guy anymore? Like, am I old now?
Yeah, I mean, Emmanuel Rodriguez has like almost the exact same birthday as me, and he's about to be out of options. So, okay, well, I think that's enough of us considering our mortality for the fans to hear. But circling back to some Twins talk, I think overall, like the theme of this podcast is just that we don't know right now what the Twins team, what the direction they're going to take, what they're going to do. We know that something will happen in the next week leading up to the trade deadline. And really, this next week of games is super important for this team. So we're going to be watching them like a hawk. We'll be dialed in on deadline day to see what they end up doing. And actually, I don't know if you all know this, but Eric and I are in different cities most of the time with these podcasts. We're recording online over Zoom. And so Eric is moving down to the cities this next week. I'm going there for work as well. So our next podcast on deadline day, after we know exactly what the Twins did at the deadline, will be our first ever in-person podcast as well. So tune in next week. It'll be a whole lot of fun.
I'm certainly incredibly excited, and I hope you guys are too, because if this is anything like any of the Twins' recent deadlines, I think we can expect just an obscene amount of belligerent screaming, yelling, and shouting, which I'm sure my new apartment neighbors would love on my second day in the apartment.
Yeah, it'll be great. It'll be fun regardless. We'll either be happy or really pissed, and it'll be entertaining either way.
I'm looking forward to it. We hope you guys are looking forward to it. If you are, as always, you can find us in your usual spots. You get a podcast on Spotify, on YouTube, on Apple. As always, you can also find us on Twitter at the Matt and Eric Talk Twins podcast. We're both getting individually involved. Matt has started to write for Twins Daily as well. Very excited to see what he has cooking up over there. So if you guys are interested, catch us pretty much anywhere you want on the internet. Until then, thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.